Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today I wanted to talk about the fighter problem that is currently on live, and my general thoughts on the subject and how we might fix it. See, at the moment, fighters are not in a great spot right now, and by fighters, I should say bruisers, I think is a term that people normally use, or alternatively, divers and juggernauts, I guess would be the best way of describing what I mean. Essentially, these are champions that, while durable, are not straight up tanks. Instead, they are intended to be tanky damage threats. So someone like Kled, for example, is a good one, in that he is not intended to be raw damage. Kled doesn't build straight lethality, jump on somebody, and burst them apart, nor is he a straight tank, where all he wants to do is just provide crowd control and block for people. Instead, Kled is intended to be a hybrid of both. He wants to go in, he wants to draw aggro, so he does need some kind of defense, but he also has enough damage to be a kill threat if left alone. So the idea is that he can effectively tank for his team by forcing them to target him instead of his team. So that's what I mean by fighters. Now, they're not in a great spot right now following preseason, and I did kind of touch on this a little bit earlier on, but I wanted to essentially do another podcast talking about it today, as I've had a little bit more time to ruminate on why fighters are weak and what might be done to change them. First, I think the biggest reason that fighters are weak is because the new rune system does favor damage. That's just the truth of the matter. Resolve is the only tree that even offers any defenses whatsoever. Most fighters don't want to spec it primary into it, and you have a lot of trees that provide more damage than anything else. So fighters are missing out on a lot of durability. Well, why is that a problem, Hellmite? The problem is that fighters need durability as much as they need damage, if not necessarily more. You don't necessarily have to kill anybody, but you need to be able to survive going in on somebody. It's the same reason why AD Assassin Vi sounds really good at the start until you realize that you don't really have an assassin's way of getting in and getting out of a fight. You just kind of go in, hope you ended up on the right target, and then hope you can burst them before you die instantly. So fighters need durability in order to function, and the new rune system doesn't really give them the ability to work in a defensive way. They essentially have to go full damage, and that's just not a strategy that really works, or they kind of go into durability, and it's just not enough for their means. So fighters don't last so long enough in fights to meaningfully contribute, and they're a lot weaker in the early game to poke champions like Jace or Kennen or Gnar, who can exploit their range to really make them have a bad day. The other thing is that fighter itemization is relatively weak, and it's weak in just that it's very expensive. Fighters have, I think, the 3 most expensive core items in the game compared to all other classes, who peak out much more sooner. In fact, AD carries actually peak out as one of the earliest classes. They get their core much more quickly than a fighter possibly can, and that means that fighters have to spend a lot of gold to even get their core set of items to feel good about themselves. And if that's not hitting until the late early game into the early mid game, it takes a long time before they can actually start meaningfully contributing to things. So this is another problem for why they feel so weak when it takes you so long to save up enough gold for these core items. And because of this, it ends up being much better to play tanks in the top lane, someone like Shen or Maokai, because they'll be relevant no matter what happens. Their itemization is not bad. They're going to itemize full defense. They don't have to worry about building damage at all, so they can afford to be relevant. They don't have to worry about it so much, and they know that there's a baseline of effectiveness they'll have. Maokai W is always good just for the targeted route. It doesn't matter how much damage it does. Kled Bear Trap, meanwhile, needs to be doing some degree of damage if it's to be useful at all. So the tanks are generally better to play, especially given that they can defend AD carries who peek out very early on in the game right now, and that kind of leads to its own warping of the game, but I'll talk about that in a different podcast. So anyway, so what do we do about fighters? Now, Riot do have a patch coming out on in December at some point. It's not a regularly scheduled patch. This is actually a bonus patch we're getting as sort of a care package to fighters to help them feel a little bit better during the whole preseason downtime that Riot have right around Christmas time. Now, they haven't given details yet. However, I would like to see Riot granting fighters more durability or more attractive itemization options, and I would also love to see them potentially add a second defensive tree or additional defensive options for fighters. So making fighter itemization a little bit more ideal, because right now I don't feel like there's a whole lot of items that you can necessarily feel good about buying. Sterix Gauge is great, but it's very expensive. Titanic Hydra is great, it's very expensive. You don't Maul Malmortius is cool, but it's just not that cost efficient once you upgrade it, and if you don't want to sit on the Hex Drinker, it really doesn't do anything for you. So there are a lot of these kinds of issues with fighter itemization. I would love to see potentially bones tossed at the class as a whole in that regard. I would especially love to see Sterix Gauge as a bit of a cheaper item, I would say, because right now it is strong, but I feel like it's potentially overcosted for what it does. And in general, that's kind of where I'm getting at. Fighters need to have a little bit more durability. They need to have potentially better itemization options. And I think besides that, they're probably fine. Right? Honestly, could stand to look at the AD carry class and the factors around them that are warping the game. But I think that if fighter itemization got a buff and if they got a durability buff, that would be plenty in my book. But that's just my opinions. Go ahead and let me know what you think of fighters down in the comment section below, especially if you guys are playing champions like Kled or Jax or Aurelia up in the top lane. Let me know what you guys are thinking about those. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and leave a like, and if you really enjoy the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. And if you're looking for more Grab the Lantern content, you can check out my blog, grabthelantern.tumblr.com. I upload an article just about each and every single day for your enjoyment. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I'll talk to you all later.